let's see how to use if function, or function, and function separately. But we can also see how to combine those functions into one formula. If with or, and also if with and with or. When we have formula within another formula in Excel, we can call it nested formula or nested function. And here, let me start with the first example, example number 1. And you can also download this Excel file. Just click in the link in the description. In this first example, I want to use the if function to help me automate a status, pass or fail, based on some students' scores. So let's say every time the final score is greater than or equal to 6, the student passed it, and every time it's less than 6, it's failed. So we can manually do this task. Let's say 8 is greater than 6, so it's passed. 7 is also greater than 6, and so on. However, whenever we have here a number such as 5.6 that is less than 6, we have failed. However, imagine we do it row by row, every single day, every single time. So instead, I'm going to use the if formula. And it's very important to learn those formulas, if, or, and separately, because that way we can understand how they work. And then we can combine them together. The first thing I want to insert here is the equals sign, because the way Excel understands that we need to do a calculation here. Equal sign, then if, double click in the formula, 1, 2 to select it. Logical test. This is the first argument the if function asks. And for the logical test, I want to check whether or not the final score is greater or equal than 6. And to do that, let me select first the final score, click on the cell, greater than or equal to. Those are the symbols I need to couple, greater and equal to. Because if, let's say, the student got a 6, 6 is greater than 6. No, it's not. However, it's equal to 6. So in this case right here, use the equal sign is also very important because it tells Excel to also consider the score 6. So every time the final score is equal or greater than 6, comma, I want to return open quotations and then pass it, close quotations. And why I'm using here the word within quotations? Because we have a text in Excel. And every time you have a text within a formula, we need to input the text within quotations, open quotations, close quotations, and that's it, comma. However, if it's false, or in other words, if the final score is not greater or equal to 6, it does mean it is less than 6. 5, 5.9, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and etc. So if this is the case, open quotations, failed, close quotations, and then close parentheses. Hit enter, and we're done. Every time now we have a final score, the status automatically updated based on the criteria we use it. Let me click in the handle, click, hold, and drag down. That way we can copy the formula to all the rows that we have. And we can see only 2 failed as a status. But anyway, it's working. This is how we can use the if function. It helps us to automate tasks, to check whether or not it's true or false. And in this second example, we are going to see a data set about shipment of goods. And in this case, we need to use our function. But why not and function or if function? Because we need to check whether or not 3 conditions are true. And in this case, the conditions don't need to be true at the same time. If only one condition is true, it's okay. It's good to go. So this is why we use or, because only one condition needs to be true, not all of them. And the conditions that I'm going to use here are, first of all, purchase price and state abbreviation. Let's say if purchase price is greater than $550, okay, this is the condition, the first one that I'm gonna look at, and the second one is going to be if the state abbreviation is equal to CA, that is California, and the second one is TX, Texas. If one of those conditions are true, everything is true. Those conditions do not need to be true at the same time. So this is why I use OR function, because this is true, or this is true, or this is true. One of those needs to be true. And if, let's say, in this row right here, the purchase price is not greater than $550. Okay. And what about the state abbreviation? Okay, the state abbreviation is indeed TX. So we have one true condition, and that's it. So it's okay. This is what I'm looking for. If one of those conditions is true, the status is going to return true. And if none of those conditions are true, the status is going to return false. If instead of using the function OR, we use the function AND, in this case, everything needs to be true in order to return a status equal to true. But let's do here, equal sign OR function, double click to select 1, 2. The first logical test that I want to input here is the purchase price is greater than or equal to $550, comma, to move to the next argument. The second logical test can be state equal to, now we are using a text, so we cannot just type the text without using a quotation marks, because we are using a text. It's different than using numbers. Open quotations, and then if it's equal to CA, it's true, close quotations, comma, and the other condition is going to be state equals to, open quotations, TX, close quotations, close parentheses, and then enter. Why does we have a true in the first row? Because is the purchase price equal to or greater than $550? Yes, it is. So, okay, it's true. Excel doesn't even going to look to the rest of the arguments, because Excel always starts from the left to the right. If the first one is true, everything is true. That's it. This is how the OR function works. Let me bring this formula down and we can see a different example. Let's say, why does this one is false? Because is the purchase price greater than 450? No, it's not. Is the state abbreviation equal to CA? No, it's not. And it's equal to TX? No, it's also not equal to TX. This is why we have false, false, false. So the answer is false. But if we go here to a different row, is the state abbreviation equal to CA? No, it's not. TX? No, it's not. But is the purchase price greater than $450? Yeah, it is. So one condition is true. So everything is true. This is how the OR function works. And this is how we can also use OR function to automate tasks. In the third example, we have something slightly different, because in this case, we are going to use the AND function. And very quickly to the previous example, why I use it OR function and not if, because if we are using the if formula right here, it cannot check for all those criteria at the same time, because as we saw before in the first example, the if formula only allow us to look at one single logical test. And in the second example, I had 3 different logical tests to look at. So this is why I was using OR and not if and not AND. However, the AND can handles the multiple criteria situation, okay? It's just the if formula that cannot handle the multiple criteria situation. But in this case, I need to check the critical inventory check. And I have this template right here with many products, category, brand, days until expiration, quantity in stock, unit price. And what I need to do is I need to check whether or not days until expiration is less than 10, okay? And at the same time, the quantity in stock is greater than 300. So let's say we need to have here days until expiration be less than 10 because it's close to expire. And quantity in stock needs to be greater than 300 because that means we have loads of this item in the inventory. And in this case, we need both of those informations to be true. Both of all of those informations. It needs to be less than 10 and at the same time greater than 300. So this is why we are using the AND function and not OR. Okay, because AND tells Excel it needs to be true, all the conditions. And for the status, we're going to do something like equal sign and formula 1, 2 to select. The logical test in this case is going to be if the days until expiration is less than 10, comma, and at the same time, the quantity in stock is greater than 300, close parentheses, it's because it's true. Otherwise, it's false. Here we have true because days until expiration is less than 10, and also the quantity in stock is greater than 300. However, if we take this formula down, click, hold, and drag, we can see, let's say, this one right here, it's also true. Maybe we can check a different column right here. Okay, this is true. And what if I change this value? Let's say 12. Okay, now we have false. But why does we have false right here if the quantity in stock is way more than 300? Because days until expiration, it's not less than 10, it's 12. That's why. So in this case, AND only allow a true result if all the conditions are true. Very different than the OR function. Now, if we move on to the fourth example, we can see a combination between if and OR function. But why is that? Why should I use if coupled with OR function? Basically, we can use if coupled with OR function when you need to have more criteria within the if formula, and you can also customize the message, the result. Let me show you here a quick example. As we can notice right here, we have or true or false. However, if I use the if function, I could customize the result. Instead of true, I could have written a different result, or instead of false, I could write down a different result. Okay, so with the if formula, we can change the result itself. And it's basically what is going to be done right here. We have a priority service with the names, age, pregnant, has disability, ID type, and so on. The conditions that I need to check are if the age is greater than 60, if pregnant is yes, and if has disability is yes. If one of those conditions are true, one of those, so we are going to use OR function because I don't need all conditions to be true at the same time, but only one single one. If one of those conditions are true, instead of return automatically by the OR function itself, we are going to use the if function and return priority service if it's true, and if it's false, standard queue. That's it. Let's go here to the status, equal sign, and then if formula 1, 2, and because the logical test within the if formula only allow us to use one single criteria, here I'm going to input OR function because the OR is going to allow us to have multiple criteria. 1, 2, that's it. The logical test is going to be, when we are using the OR function, the order of the selection doesn't matter, okay? Even though Excel reads the formula from the left to the right, think about it. It's making no difference if you start from a column in the middle and then a column to the right, a column to the left, because if one of those columns are true, everything is true, right? So in this situation right here, the order doesn't matter at all. So if has disability, click on the cell, is equal to open quotations, yes, close quotations, comma. And if this is yes, or if pregnant is equal to yes, comma, or age is greater than or equal to 60, close parentheses. If one of those conditions are true, what is going to happen? Everything is going to be considered true. And when something is true within the if formula, what we can have? Comma, a value if it's true. And if it's true, what I want to return? Open quotations, the status that we have right here, priority service. Priority service. Close quotations, comma, open quotations. However, if it's false, I want to return standard queue. Close quotations, close parentheses, and then enter. If I drag this formula down, I can return the result to all the rows. And that's it. This is how we can automate tasks using the OR function within if function. And finally, in the fifth example, we have if coupled with and coupled with OR. And in this case, why should I use not only if with and or if with OR? Because in this case, I need to have in a certain column a condition that always needs to be true. So if something always needs to be true, no matter what, you should use and. And if you have conditions that can be true, or let's say you have 3 conditions, just one of those conditions need to be true, not those 3 at the same time. So you can include those conditions within the OR. However, if you have one single condition that needs to be true all the time, you include this condition within the AND formula. And in this case, what I need to do? I need to check for the purchase amount, because purchase amount always needs to be true. But in what situation? What is the criterion? The purchase amount always needs to be greater than or equal to 500. Always, okay? So here we are going to use the AND function. And we have 3 conditions that can be true or not. However, one of those needs to be true. And in this case, we are going to look at the column E and column F. We need to have VIP customer to be yes, or coupon used needs to be save 5%. That's it. And so in this case right here, this first argument always needs to be true. And the second one, where we have 2 arguments, one of those arguments needs to be true. We don't need to have both being true at the same time. If only one is true, it's okay, it's fine. So this is the combination I'm gonna do here. Equal sign, if formula, always start with if, because the if function is what is going to let you customize the final result. Double click onto this function, and let's start first with the AND function. But why is that? Because the AND is where we have the situation that always needs to be true. So in my experience, I always like to start with the AND formula. So if within parentheses and open another parenthesis to select the AND function, and the logical test is going to be always I need to the purchase amount be greater than or equal to 500. That's it. It always needs to be true. Okay, so comma. Now we have a different situation right here, because we have other 2 conditions, VIP and also discount coupon, right? And where should I input those criteria? Within the AND formula. Within the AND formula, we can type OR, double click, 1, 2. The logical test now is going to be if the VIP is equal to open quotations, yes, close quotations, comma, or the coupon used is equal to open quotations, save 5, close quotations, close parentheses. And we need to close another parenthesis, because we close one parenthesis for the OR function and another one for the AND function. And just to clearly explain the situation of this formula right here, if we have a true condition right here, it doesn't matter if it's in the first or in the second argument, we're going to have a true result. And if we have a true situation right here, within the AND formula, we also going to have a true. True with true is equal to true. So if everything that is within the if formula is equal to true, what we need to do? Close quotations, and then the value if it's true. However, I don't want to type something here that is a text. I want to do a calculation that is going to be cell D8, where I have the purchase amount times 0.95. Or in other words, I'm going to reduce the price by 5% times 0.95. Comma. However, if the value is false, I want to use the purchase amount itself. That's it. Close parentheses and then hit enter. And what we have here is the final result, $320. And if we check right here, okay, it's the same as before. However, if I click, hold, and drag down, maybe we have some different results. Let's check this one. Yeah, here we have a different result, but let's check why. Is purchase amount greater than 500? Yes, it is. This is the first condition. It needs to be greater than 500. Is the VIP equal to yes? No, it's not. But okay, we have a second chance. Is the coupon equal to save 5? Yes, it is. So true in this group right here is also true. True with true is equal to true. So this is why we have a discount. However, let's check a different situation right here. Look at this case. We have yes and save 5. So we have true and true for this situation. However, we didn't get a discount in the final result. But why is that? Because in the first argument that always needs to be true, purchase amount, we got a false. So the final situation is T with T is equal to T, and F is a F. And in this case, because we have false and true, everything is going to be false. Because remember, the first argument always needs to be true because of the AND function. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video on how to use the if, and, or function in Excel. And if you have any questions or any suggestions to the next videos, let me know, comment down below, and I see you in the next one.